Hi, Tribe. I'm Evelyn, and this is Demon Dialogues, the place on Objectively Typed where we talk about everybody's favorite topic, your demons. So this week, I want to go a little bit off plan here. So last week, I said that I would probably be talking about Demon Blast as my next Demon Dialogue. But sometimes there comes situations and times in your life where the universe, for whatever reason, just keeps putting the same topic in front of you again and again and again. And I'm not religious. I'm not in the traditional sense. Like I'm more sort of spiritual, if you will. But however you want to call it, whenever that happens to me, whenever something just keeps knocking on my door, I've learned to pay attention to it. I've learned that I'm better off paying attention to that thing and changing course towards that thing than just continuing down my plan. Because there's some reason why my mind keeps noticing the same topic over and over and over again, right? I tend to think it's like my subconscious mind is picking that up. My reticular activating system or whatever sees that. And this week it has been embracing the darkness. The concept, the very idea of embracing the darkness. Now, I mean, part of it was about a week ago, Versavi and I recorded a podcast episode on the hero's journey. Look for that when it comes out. It's going to be a great episode. And so in talking about the hero's journey, which is an idea essentially popularized by Joseph Campbell, this idea, which is a reoccurring story that occurs in mythology from all over the world. So there's something inherently human about this story. Joseph Campbell looked at cultures from all over the world, and he found this kind of recurring pattern, this myth that tells itself over and over in the hero's journey. But part of the hero's journey is there comes a point where the hero must die. The hero loses everything, and the hero must die. Deathbed moment, crisis moment, crushing defeat. You can Google it, and you can find all kinds of words and names for this. So the question becomes, like, if the hero dies, or if you reach this point, this crisis point, this crushing defeat point, how do you get out of it? And if you pay attention to the hero's journey, if you study the hero's journey, if you pay attention to media, okay, like popular media today it's full of stories like this. The hero must embrace the darkness in order to get out of that crushing defeat moment. So that's the mythological way of looking at it. But there are people in reality that tell a story of having an experience like this. You hear stories like Byron Katie, for example, where she was in a halfway house. She had lost everything. She had lost everything. And what happened? She's laying on the floor, on a wooden floor, and a roach crawls over her foot. And she wakes up. She realizes she comes out of this stupor. She embraces the darkness of her life, and she realizes the four questions and everything that came to Byron Katie. Her four questions, is it true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? Who would I be without the thought? Like, she learns to question her thoughts. She learns that her thoughts are not reality. They don't reflect reality. That's the Byron Katie story. Mel Robbins has a very famous story about she had lost everything. She was stuck in bed. She couldn't get out of bed. And then that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 idea came to her. Well, what really occurred to me just this week, like I'm not gonna sit here and say like I've had like a Byron Katie moment. Although I've had these little moments that are like that, where you have this like suddenly this clear seeing of reality. But the one that hit me today was, or not today, but this week, was a better understanding of what people are talking about when they talk about embracing the darkness. Like, what does that actually mean, to embrace the darkness? So I've heard this for years. You should embrace the darkness. You got to embrace the dark side, right? And only through that will you see the light, or only through that will you be able to move on. I've heard this a lot. And honestly, up until this week, my understanding of that, and I still think it's a valid understanding. So I'm not saying that this is wrong. I just want to add more to that. But my understanding of that idea of accepting the darkness was basically learning to accept that life contains darkness. So before getting into typology, before getting into OPS, any of this stuff, I come from a Buddhist background. Okay, I studied Soto Zen Buddhism for many years, for over a decade. I practiced Soto Zen Buddhism for many years. I went to retreat. I worked with a teacher, the whole kit and caboodle, you name it. Um, and Buddhism has the concept in the Four Noble Truths that life is suffering. That's the way it's often said, is like life is suffering. Although it could be translated as life contains suffering. Suffering is in life. Suffering is an inherent part of life, right? And that's what I always understood accepting the darkness to be. It was truly accepting the first noble truth that life contains suffering. You can't have life without suffering. Now, the second noble truth goes on and talks about the source of suffering and so forth and the way out. But in my mind, embracing the darkness meant embracing or understanding. And I think, like, again, like, to bring this back to OPS, I'm an NT, so I am very much a cerebral person, like very much of like, I need to understand, right? I get it. I understand suffering is in this world. You have told me this, Buddhist teacher. I understand this concept, right? I think in my mind, that was embracing the darkness, right? And I've been through some dark stuff. Like I've been through the loss of my brother and my mother completely out of nowhere. Both the deaths were sudden and they were within 18 months of each other. Like it was a hard time. It was a dark time. And the way that I got through that is I was very present every single day. I never looked beyond that day. I was very much a, one breath at a time, one step at a time, going through that. But like, I've seen my mom's corpse. Like that's accepting the darkness. I looked at that. I saw that with my, with my eyes, like physically, right? And that's a hard thing to go through. That's a hard thing to go through. But I knew that I had to do that because all of this Buddhist studying that I had done and everything I had learned talked about needing to accept and be with and sit with the positive aspects of life. So the parts of my mom that I still remember of like hugging her and being with her, and the dark side of life, which was going with my dad to go see her at the morgue and not making him do that by himself and going there and being able to be present with what that meant, right? That is one form of accepting the darkness, but and that's very real and that's very transformative and it's very important to do. Like I don't want to take that away at all because there's a lot of aspects of embracing the darkness. But the thing that like really hit me this week that I wanted to talk about, because it not only did it hit me as a realization for myself, I then like someone shared an article with me from tinybuddha.com. I'll put it down. I'll put a link in the description about this very topic, which is accepting those parts of ourself that we want to push away. Those parts of ourself that we don't want to acknowledge, that are painful, to finally not only accept intellectually that like, okay, I'm a human, so I'm going to be sad sometimes, but embracing that and taking that on as part of your identity and part of your reality and making friends with that and having it and integrating that in and loving that aspect of yourself. And I mean it. Like this sounds, you're like, what? You want me to love my depression, my grief, my fear? And I'm saying, yeah, I'm saying that embracing the darkness is all about taking those feelings that you naturally want to reject and naturally want to pretend like they don't exist or push away or resolve, and actually feeling those feelings, actually integrating those in and accepting they're part of who you are. It's actually kind of funny that so in Buddhism, we talk a lot about this idea of satori, which is like a true seeing, right? And then this idea of just like intellectually knowing things. So I do think that there's like an intellectual knowing that tends to happen first, where it's like you hear a concept and you're like, okay, I get it, I get it, I get it, I get it. And then there's like a deep moment. Now, I'm a kinesthetic. I'm double masculine, kinesthetic. So I'm very much like it's embodied, right? You feel it. I don't know how it would work for the other modalities. I don't know. If you're listening to this and you have a different modality and you know what I'm talking about, comment, let me know. Like visual, audio, tester. I'm like, what's the other one? Tester. Like, what's that like? But for a kinesthetic, it's a body awareness. And, so this is something that Byron Katie talks about in her books. There was one part in one of her books where she was working with a guy who had been through he had been through Nazi Germany, like he had been through the war. So I think like some of her books are a little bit older. So like, I think, this guy obviously was an older gentleman, and she was interviewing him or she was doing the work, like Byron Katie calls it the work, with him. And he was talking about being in his house when the bombs were falling, and how like it was very interesting because in a lot of ways, because he had never processed that pain, he had never accepted that pain. He was an old man. He was still hurting from that. He was still carrying that with him. And that's the thing, guys. Whether or not you acknowledge it, you're still carrying that around with you. Like, just put on your backpack of pain and carry it. And you don't know it, and you're pretending like you do, but you don't, because you're not acknowledging and accepting that pain. And so this man, for like, I don't know, 50 years, I don't know, had been carrying around this pain of being a little boy in this building where the bombs were dropping. And Byron Katie like walks him through the work. And like one of the things she does in her turnaround is she'll say like, I look forward to, and so it's like, it's really hard because it's like you're kind of taking this thing that's painful and you're saying, I look forward to that pain in the future. And she like did that with him. Like, I look forward to the bombs dropping again or something like that. And he was like, I can't do that. And she's like, you have to do that. And I never really understood that part of the book. Like, I always was like, that's weird. Why would she do that? And now I see it's because it's one way. It's like a mental exercise to sort of embrace the darkness. It's a mental, when Byron Katie says to a person, let's do the turnaround, and the turnaround is like, for example, let's take a more real world example, like a you and me example, something that we probably deal with, right? Especially me as a female. Body image. Yeah, I'm going there. Body image. How many of us women, we hate our bodies, or they're not good enough, or whatever, right? And so like, there's a part of me that hates that idea. Like, I don't want to be that way. I don't want to hate my body. I want my body to be this, to be that. And some people make really poor food choices. Some people go to full body dysmorphia, but a lot of us women struggle with that. And so what if we actually said like, I look forward to not liking my body? Isn't that crazy? Like, it's crazy to say, but the reality is that is what we are going to do. Like, instead of pretending like those negative thoughts are never going to happen, the idea is that you actually embrace that part of yourself. You take that in and say like, yeah, I'm a person. I'm a human being. Sometimes I have these feelings, and that's okay. I'm going to nurture those feelings. I'm going to love those feelings. I'm going to love that part of me, and then work. And then in that way, it's a very interesting thing, because once you do that, it actually releases on its own a lot of times. It actually releases on its own. So yeah, I wanted to talk about that. Because it's an interesting thing. Like, on the one hand, you have these negative emotions, this dark part of you, and you reject them, but that actually feeds them. That actually feeds and fuels the negative thinking, and it continues it. Sometimes in the background. Sometimes you're not consciously aware of it, but you're carrying it around. That pain is somewhere. That's another thing, is I did a lot of yoga teacher training, or I did yoga teacher training, and so I practiced a lot of yoga in my 20s. And we would talk about this, about how like we store pain in certain parts of our body, and a lot of times people don't realize that there's that pain there until they're sitting in yoga and they get a deep enough stretch that hits them right in the, sometimes the hips hold a lot of stuff, our shoulders hold a lot of stuff, and you're stretching that out, and then that stuff releases on its own. It's been there. And so it's a matter of like, how can you breathe into that space and embrace it as like, that's my pain and I'm going to own it. And in doing that, it actually can release, because that's what it's like looking for. If you think of it in like a conscious fashion, it's looking for that. So yeah, today's demon dialogue a little bit different, but that's still talking about our demons. Like, it's still talking about the dark side and the growth side of this. And I think where OPS can help, first of all, Dave and Shannon talk about the hero's journey. They have a whole series on it. So definitely check that out. And then second of all, the whole idea of like understanding your type is not to just have some sort of like, look at me, I'm an ENFP jumper, I'm so cool. Like, that's not the point. The point of having your type is to be able to understand those areas that you're probably not taking responsibility for. Those areas that are the dark side so that you can embrace them as part of who you are, the areas that you're missing. So like for me, I've got demon SF. I've got demon SF. And it's like, that's an area that I'm less conscious about. That's an area that I haven't paid attention to, especially when you get into the functions I don't have, like FE. Like you get into FE land, and it's like, I haven't taken responsibility for that. How can I embrace that? How can I bring that in and take care of that and say like, yeah, that's part of me too. How can I integrate that? And in doing so, release. So yeah, tell me your thoughts. This is a little bit different demon dialogue, but I expect more of these once I kind of work my way through. This isn't all about functions. Like to me, the whole point of typology and psychology, or any of this stuff, even if it's pop psychology, philosophy, is all to figure out tools that can help us. How can we improve and grow and give? So see you next time. Bye.